Hello again, XDA TV. Today we're going to take a look at the ASUS ZenFone 2. The ZenFone 2 was just launched here in the US in the middle of May, and I've had this one for about 2 weeks now. I just uploaded a video unboxing this over on my channel, which I'll link to down in the video description if you're interested in seeing what comes in the box and the first time it boots up and the setup wizard and everything. But this version of the ZenFone is model number ZE551ML-Z00AD, which is a bit of a mouthful. But basically what makes this one unique is that it has the Intel Atom Z3580 quad-core processor running at 2.3 GHz, 4 gigs of RAM, and 64 gigs of storage. And we'll get to all the rest of the specs during the rest of the review. Before getting this device in hand, the Intel processor was the one thing I was really curious about, since I hadn't tried an Atom-based mobile device running Android before this. And as far as how it performs, I will admit I have been impressed so far. If you put any faith in benchmarks, it does score over 48,000 with AnTuTu 64-bit, which puts it right in line with the LG G4. I tend to stick to everyday usability stuff though, and for everyday usage, most things ran smoothly. The UI didn't really feel bloated or sluggish or anything, at least not in my experience. There were a couple of apps, things like Google Plus, that had a little bit of a lag when you were scrolling through a lot of stuff, but nothing major. And with that massive 4 gigs of RAM, I was able to keep loads and loads of apps running at the same time, and then switch between them very easily using the built-in app switcher. I did a bit of gaming on this as well, and I didn't notice any real issues with the games that I normally play. Games started up quickly enough, they played smoothly, no questions asked. Now I don't really spend a ton of time gaming on mobile devices, but when I spent quite a bit of time doing it, I noticed it got warm, but it didn't get hot, which is very good. One of the big things people have been asking me about this when I mentioned I was going to be reviewing it was if the apps were supported. Since it comes with an Intel processor instead of an ARM processor, people were curious if apps were going to work. I didn't really think that was a thing anymore, but I'll just say it. I haven't found any apps that I've been missing yet. I'm definitely sure it's a possibility since I do only use a reasonably small number of apps, like 30 or 40 different apps. So if you know of any that just plain won't work on this Atom processor, do make sure to let us know down below. I'll test them if you let us know. Moving on to the display. As I mentioned before, it's a 5.5-inch 1080p display and it has an IPS panel. I'm not equipped to test the accuracy of colors or anything, but the colors do look nice to my eye. I will say though, it does not get terribly bright. Indoors it does just fine, but it's almost unusable outdoors in any kind of real sunlight, even at 100% brightness. So that's a bit of a bummer. Now for the camera, I'm just gonna say it ahead of time. I have been absolutely spoiled by using the Galaxy S6 and the LG G4. The 5-megapixel front-facing camera on the ZenFone 2 does alright. It defaults to a beautification mode though, so if you wanted to shoot front-facing video, you have to switch over to another mode first, like auto mode or something, and then start the video, and I'm not a fan of that. I would like for it to be able to default to a different mode. The rear-facing camera can take some really nice shots in good lighting, which I think should be expected of pretty much any phone nowadays. Focusing is still a bit hit or miss on it though. I found several shots that I took outdoors were just out of focus, and since it was so hard to see the display outdoors, I couldn't really tell at the time. It also has the option to do a super resolution, which they claim can capture images up to 52 megapixels. I tested it out a few times, and the storage that it used was about twice as much as a normal image, and it had about 4 times the resolution, but it didn't really make a huge difference with the end result. It was a little better, but it wasn't massively better, and it took quite a bit longer to capture, so I don't know if that trade-off's worth it. In lower lighting, it definitely does not do terribly well. Really grainy, blurry images, and I didn't have a great experience using the flash, so I just avoided it. As far as video, since that's what I do, I'm really not a fan of it. 1080p at 30 frames per second is what you're going to get out of the rear-facing camera, and it doesn't look terrible for a cell phone, but again, I've been spoiled by this generation's flagship devices. I did upload a video that I shot on the ZenFone's camera over on my channel last week if you'd like to see the results from it. However, I should mention, the audio from it is a bit weird. It seems to have a sort of a built-in automatic gain control, so if you stop talking for just a second and everything goes really quiet, then it is impossible to hear what you say for the next second or two after you start talking again. Hopefully the problems that I have with the camera are things that can be fixed with software updates. And actually, speaking of audio, as with a lot of the phones that I've tried lately, this one has a small rear-facing speaker. And as I've said many times, I'm not a fan of rear-facing speakers. But this one in particular sounds alright. It could be worse. It can put out a decent enough amount of sound when you crank it all the way up. As far as storage, obviously I never even had to think twice about it. 64 gigs of storage, and out of the box it had 50 gigabytes of usable storage, which is awesome. But if that's not enough for you, there is always that micro SD card slot built in, and it's got a few tricks built into the UI that you can tell it to prefer using external storage whenever possible, which is really nice. Connectivity was also a bit of a concern of mine before this showed up, but as you know, this device did release in the US, so it does support US LTE bands, which is awesome. I've been using it on Cricket, so obviously my bandwidth is going to be throttled, but I haven't seen any issues with coverage or speed as compared to other devices. In addition, as I mentioned in the unboxing, it does have 2 SIM slots, although only the first one's going to be able to do data. It also does Bluetooth 4, and surprisingly enough, it does Wi-Fi 802.11 AC, which is still kind of rare to find in a phone. Build quality is something I definitely wanted to make sure to touch on as well. This thing feels solid as a rock. On paper, it's 170 grams, which is just about 30 grams heavier than the Galaxy S6, but in the hand it feels quite a bit heavier. The screen is Gorilla Glass 3, which is great, but somehow in the week and a half that I've been using this, I've managed to get 2 minor scratches on the screen already, so you might want to invest in a screen protector if you're going to purchase this. The removable back is a really nice feature, but it can be kind of difficult to remove. I have really strong fingernails and I have trouble getting it to come off. Speaking of the removable back though, let's go ahead and talk about the battery. Unfortunately, being able to take the back cover off does not mean that you can take the battery out. Still, it's 3000 milliamp hours, so it will last you a good long while. I managed to get it down to 11% at the end of a day when I literally sat still and played on this thing for 2 hours straight. When I thoroughly taxed this, I've seen over 2.5 hours of screen on time, which is pretty respectable. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about, since this is XDA, is development. The kernel source for the ZenFone 2 is available, so development should be good to go. But looking at the forum, I see a tethered version of Twerp available and a couple of pre-rooted firmwares, and that's about it. Hopefully once this device makes it into the hands of more developers, we'll start to see more development being done on it. So all in all, to wrap this up, I think this is a great device. May not have sounded like it from some of the review, but you gotta consider the price. You can get the ZenFone 2 for $199. That's for the 2GB, 16 gigs of storage version. Or you can get this version, which I think is $299. And if you're gonna go between one or the other, I would definitely say go for the one with more RAM and more storage if you've got the cash. My only real issue with this thing has been the camera. The camera has just not been all that good. And that's really only saying that compared to this generation's flagships. Those devices are in the $700 range, this one was $300. So you're not exactly comparing apples to apples there. I may have to do a follow-up video over on my channel comparing the camera on this to the OnePlus One, because now the price has dropped on the OnePlus One. It's an even closer match at this point, so it might be worth comparing the cameras on the two, because the OnePlus One can do 4K video and this can only do 1080p, so I may do that if you guys are interested in seeing something like that. But again, for 200 or 300 bucks, depending on which one you want of these, definitely not a bad phone to get. It comes with Android 5.0 Lollipop. Hopefully we'll see Android 5.1 coming to it before too much longer. It's got a big, nice battery. It's got decent performance using that Intel processor. It's practically a flagship for less than 300 bucks. You cannot complain about that. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, if there's anything I forgot to mention, do feel free to mention it down in the comment section below. Remember, if you like this video, please do give us a thumbs up down below the video and subscribe to receive all of our videos when they become available. Thanks so much for watching though, and I will see you again next time.